There is a place in the Mojave Desert where the streets have names, but no people remember them, where water pipes snake beneath ground that never saw a single garden, where American optimism met the unforgiving truth of sand and sun. What happened to the city that was supposed to rival Los Angeles? It started with a dream, the way so many American stories do. Nat Mendelsohn was born in Czechoslovakia in 1915 and came to America as a boy, stepping off the boat with his family into the promise of a new world. He grew up in New York City tenements, cramped and crowded, where neighbors knew your business and the streets buzzed with life. Those narrow hallways and tiny rooms shaped him. He studied sociology at Columbia University, became fascinated with how communities work, how people build lives together in shared spaces. He wanted to understand what made neighborhoods thrive or fail. After World War II ended and the boys came home, America was bursting at the seams. Young couples were getting married, having babies, needing houses. The country had saved up money during the war years when there was nothing to buy, and now everyone wanted to spend. They wanted yards and garages and room for their growing families. Los Angeles was growing so fast it seemed ready to explode. Traffic jams already choked the boulevards even back then. Smog hung over the city like a gray blanket. Mendelsohn believed he had the answer, a better way to build cities from scratch. In 1956, he found his canvas. Deep in the Mojave Desert, about 100 miles north of Los Angeles, sat a ranch called Mendaburu and Rudnick. The land looked like nothing special at first glance, just scrubby desert and dust devils dancing in the heat. Creosote bushes dotted the landscape. Jackrabbits darted between rocks. The sun beat down mercilessly on everything. But hidden beneath that barren surface was something precious. 11 wells that never ran dry, feeding fields of bright green alfalfa that seemed to mock the surrounding wasteland. Those green fields stood out like emeralds against the tan and brown desert. Can you imagine standing there in that vast emptiness and believing you could build paradise? Mendelsohn could. He bought 82,000 acres in 1958 for $6 million. It was a fortune, but he had backers, investors from New York, who believed in his vision. He called it California City, and he approached it the way a professor would approach a dissertation. The city would be designed all at once, not piecemeal like Los Angeles had grown. He hired the best urban planners and architects he could find. Wide curving streets to slow down traffic and make neighborhoods feel intimate. Green belts for walking and bicycles, safe paths where kids could ride without worrying about cars. A central park with an artificial lake and a waterfall. Golf courses for recreation, shopping centers, schools and universities. Room for 400,000 people to live in comfort and peace, away from the crowded chaos of big city life. The design took a full year to complete. Every detail mattered to Mendelsohn. The exact shade of green on the street signs so they would be visible but not garish. The species of trees that would line the boulevards chosen to withstand desert heat while providing shade. The curve of each road engineered to create neighborhoods that felt connected yet spacious. Even the fonts on the signs were carefully selected. This was not just a housing development. This was a blueprint for how Americans should live in the second half of the 20th century. And people believed. Lord, how they believed. By 1958, crews were clearing brush and carving roads into the desert floor. Bulldozers scraped away thousands of years of undisturbed earth. Cement mixers poured miles and miles of pavement. Water pipes were laid underground, snaking through the sand like arteries waiting for a city to bring to life. Street signs went up on corners where no houses stood, pointing to neighborhoods that existed only in blueprints. Mendelsohn was a natural salesman, the kind of man who could convince you the desert would bloom. He was handsome and dapper, usually wearing a Brooks Brothers suit, even in the blistering heat, carrying a gold-tipped cane like a gentleman from another era. He understood what people wanted to hear in those optimistic post-war years. He told them California City would be the next great American metropolis. He told them they could buy a piece of the dream cheap and watch their investment grow like money in the bank. He told them their children would grow up in a planned paradise, safe and prosperous and full of opportunity. The advertisements were beautiful, almost too beautiful. Glossy brochures showed families sailing on the artificial lake under blue skies, children playing in manicured parks that looked like something from a storybook, couples strolling along tree-shaded paths hand in hand. The lake was always photographed in early morning before the fierce desert winds kicked up and made sailing nearly impossible. The trees in the photos looked lush and green, though maintaining that kind of vegetation in the Mojave required constant irrigation. Were those images real or just carefully staged fantasies meant to sell a dream? People came from everywhere to see this miracle in the making. They flew in on small planes that landed right on the unfinished streets, touching down on pavement that would supposedly become downtown boulevards. They arrived by bus from San Diego and Los Angeles, eager buyers clutching checkbooks and wearing their Sunday best. Some came from as far as the Philippines and Germany, drawn by advertisements that promised a piece of the California dream. Mendelsohn sold them the sizzle, not the steak. He sold them the story of getting in on the ground floor of the next Las Vegas, the next Palm Springs, the next big thing in the Golden State. The sales pitches were legendary. Buyers would be driven out to the empty desert and asked to imagine. Imagine your house right here. Imagine your neighbors over there. Imagine the shopping center that will be built just around the corner. Imagine the schools where your children will learn. Imagine the value of this land when California City has 400,000 residents and you were smart enough to buy when it was cheap. Some people bought multiple lots, planning to hold them as investments. Others bought with dreams of retiring to the desert sun, away from cold northern winters. In 1962, Mendelsohn pulled off his most audacious publicity stunt, one that captured the imagination and made newspapers across the country. He hired a helicopter to fly 10 gallons of water from New York Central Park all the way across the nation to California, to pour ceremonially into California City's new artificial lake. It was pure theater, symbolic and showy. He was connecting the crowded tenements of his childhood to the wide-open spaces of his desert dream. Can you picture that moment? The helicopter hovering over the lake, water cascading down, photographers snapping pictures, Mendelsohn smiling his salesman's smile. The town got its first post office in 1960, a small building that seemed to promise that civilization was taking root. Its own zip code shortly after, another official recognition that this was becoming a real place. In 1965, California City officially incorporated with a population of about 600 people. They held a big dance at the newly built elementary school to celebrate. The school had not even opened yet, but its cafeteria made a perfect venue. Mendelsohn gave a speech about the bright future ahead. The Lieutenant Governor of California showed up, lending official credibility to the venture. Everyone felt the electricity of possibility in the air, the sense that they were part of something historic. But something was already going wrong beneath the surface. Those 11 wells that never ran dry, the ones that had made the land seem so promising, started running dry. The underground aquifer turned out to be on the opposite side of where Mendelsohn had planned the city center. All those early roads and pipes had been built in the wrong place. Finding water became a desperate and expensive search. The city government took over maintenance of all those hundreds of miles of roads and water pipes that Mendelsohn had built. And suddenly California City was $7.5 million in debt the moment it incorporated. The new city government inherited a financial nightmare. Then there were the dust storms, something Mendelsohn had not anticipated. When they cleared the desert brush to prepare for development, they destroyed the natural protection against wind erosion. The scrubby plants that had held the soil in place for millennia were scraped away. Santa Ana winds would kick up and send walls of dust sweeping through the empty streets like something from the Dust Bowl. The dust was so thick you could not see 10 feet in front of you. It got in your eyes, your mouth, your lungs. It coated everything. Families who drove out from Los Angeles or San Diego to see their purchased lots took one look at the choking dust storms and decided this was not the paradise they had been promised in those glossy brochures. By the late 1960s, buyers were getting angry, and their anger was turning to legal action. They had paid good money for lots that sat vacant year after year. The shopping centers Mendelsohn had promised never materialized. The university never appeared. The industrial parks that were supposed to provide jobs never got built. The promised boom never came. Mail delivery to many addresses was impossible because the addresses did not exist. Some started asking hard questions about whether they had been intentionally deceived. Ralph Nader's consumer protection attorneys, the famous Raiders, investigated California City and called it more than an ordinary real estate scheme. Their report was scathing. They said Mendelsohn was not really selling land. He was selling a grand illusion of wealth creation, convincing people they could turn their modest investments into fortunes simply by waiting for inevitable growth that might never happen. Desert dust into gold, but only for him and his investors, not for the ordinary people buying lots. The Federal Trade Commission eventually got involved, launching investigations that would drag on for years. California's Deputy Attorney General wrote a damning report in 1969, though it was not widely distributed at the time. The conclusion was brutal. Mendelsohn had perfected the art of creating wealth from nothing, but the wealth flowed only one direction. By the 1970s, California City became one of the biggest FTC enforcement cases of the 20th century. Mendelsohn's reputation was ruined. His company, Great Western Cities, went bankrupt. His grand vision crumbled. But here is the strange and unexpected thing. People kept living there anyway. Some families had already built houses and put down roots. They had jobs nearby at Edwards Air Force Base, where test pilots broke the sound barrier. Others worked at the boron mine, the largest open-pit boron mine in the world. Some people simply liked the isolation and the wide-open spaces. The 1970 census counted 1,309 residents, a tiny fraction of what Mendelsohn had envisioned, but still a real community. By 1980, it had doubled to 2,743. By 1990, almost 6,000 people called California City home. For a while, it looked like maybe Mendelsohn's dream was just running slow, that eventually those empty streets would fill with houses and families and the sound of children playing after school. It never happened that way. The population growth slowed to a crawl as reality set in. Water got more and more expensive as the aquifer depleted. The wells started failing one by one. Infrastructure built for hundreds of thousands of people served only thousands, making maintenance costs astronomical. By 2000, there were only about 8,000 residents. Today, California City has around 14,000 people living in a city designed for 400,000. It is officially the third largest city in California by land area, covering more square miles than San Francisco, but with a fraction of a percent of San Francisco's population. Drive through California City today, and you will see something surreal and unsettling. In the western part of town, there is actual development. Houses line some streets, modest homes where real families live real lives. There is a school where children attend classes, a golf course where retirees play 9 holes, a maximum security prison that once employed many locals but closed in 2024, taking jobs with it. The Central Park still exists, though the lake is green with algae and the waterfall has long since stopped flowing. It looks tired and forgotten, a relic from an optimistic past. But venture east and you enter what locals call the ghost grid. Street after street after street, perfectly paved and maintained, stretching for hundreds of miles through empty desert. Official street signs mark intersections with names like Aristotle Drive and Kennedy Boulevard and Imagination Street. Cul-de-sacs curve gracefully around empty lots, their turning circles perfect and unused. Stop signs stand at corners where no car has stopped in decades. The infrastructure for a city exists buried beneath your feet. Water pipes and electrical conduits snake through the sand, waiting patiently for houses that will likely never come, for families that will never move in, for a future that exists only in fading blueprints. From the air, it looks like something ancient and mysterious. Lines carved into the desert by some lost civilization trying to impose order on chaos. A ritual pattern without meaning or purpose. It has been compared to the Blythe intaglios, those massive geoglyphs made by Native Americans centuries ago in the Colorado Desert. But those had spiritual significance. The California city grid has only the ghost of commercial ambition. 50,000 lots were sold over the decades. Most remain empty still. Many buyers live thousands of miles away, in the Philippines, in Germany, in cities across America. Some have never even seen their land in person. They bought a dream that exists only on paper and in those fading advertisements from another era. Some pass the deeds down to their children who inherit desert lots they will never build on. Others simply stop paying taxes and let the county take the land back. Mendelsohn himself kept coming back to California City even after everything fell apart, even after the lawsuits and the bankruptcy and the public disgrace. He would drive out to Galileo Hill, the high point where he used to sit and imagine his perfect city coming to life beneath him. He would set up his telescope at night and gaze at the stars in perfect darkness. No, light pollution when there are no lights to pollute. Did he feel regret standing there alone, or did he still see the shimmering vision of what he had promised? Did he blame himself or blame the buyers for not understanding his genius? He died in 1980, still believing his vision was simply ahead of its time, still convinced that someday the world would catch up to his dream. Others tried to revive that dream in later years using remarkably similar tactics. In the mid-2000s, a company called Silver Saddle Ranch started selling California city lots again using many of Mendelsohn's old playbook moves. Free weekend getaways at a desert resort they built, high-pressure sales presentations in hotel conference rooms, promises that the city would boom any day now and early investors would get rich when development finally came. They targeted immigrant communities specifically, separating buyers by ethnicity and pairing them with salespeople who spoke their language, who understood their dreams of making it in America. Thousands of people lost their life savings buying into that old familiar story. Filipino immigrants dreaming of their own food trucks, Chinese families hoping to secure their retirement, Latino workers looking for a piece of land to call their own. California regulators eventually shut Silver Saddle Ranch down after investigations revealed the scope of the deception, but the damage was done. Another generation learned the hard way that dreams in the desert evaporate quickly under the relentless sun. What remains is a monument to American optimism and American excess intertwined, a place where post-war confidence met the immovable limits of geography and economics. The roads are still there, perfectly laid out according to plan, going nowhere. City maintenance crews still repair potholes on streets that serve no homes. The street signs still point the way to neighborhoods that never existed outside of sales brochures. The water pipes still run beneath ground that has never been irrigated, never seen a lawn or a rose bush or a vegetable garden. Some people love California City precisely because of its emptiness and strangeness. Off-road enthusiasts race dirt bikes and dune buggies through the undeveloped sections, treating the ghost grid like an enormous playground. Birdwatchers flock to the Central Park because thousands of migrating birds stop there on the Pacific Flyway, finding unexpected water in the desert. Every September, a festival called Wasteland Weekend draws people from across the country who want to experience a post-apocalyptic landscape without having to imagine one. They dress in Mad Max costumes and camp among the empty streets, celebrating the end of the world in a city that never quite began. The city government keeps maintaining those hundreds of miles of empty roads, spending taxpayer money on a strange civic duty to infrastructure serving almost no one. It is expensive and somewhat absurd, but if they stopped maintaining them, if they let the desert reclaim what was taken, they would be admitting final defeat. Every so often, a developer proposes a new plan to finally fill in the grid, to complete Mendelsohn's vision at last. Solar farms, cannabis farms before the water ran out, new housing developments. It never comes to fruition. California City grows slowly, organically, in ways Mendelsohn never intended, shaped by what people can afford and what the desert will allow, rather than by grand visions and master plans drawn up in distant offices. There is something deeply haunting about walking those empty streets alone. Your footsteps echo in the silence. The wind hisses through creosote bushes, the only sound for miles. You stand at an intersection of two perfectly maintained roads and see nothing but horizon in every direction, sky and sand meeting in a blurred line. It feels like being inside an abandoned dream, a place where someone's imagination built an elaborate framework but forgot to fill in the life, the messy human details that make a city real. Maybe that is the real lesson California City teaches us. You cannot manufacture community from blueprints and sales pitches. You cannot force a city into being through sheer will and clever marketing and investor money. People build cities by living in them, by making them home one family at a time, one friendship at a time, one shared experience at a time, one little league game, and one church potluck, and one neighborhood barbecue at a time. All the master planning in the world cannot replace that organic, chaotic, beautiful growth. Mendelsohn understood sociology in theory, but perhaps he understood it too abstractly, too academically. He knew how communities function once they exist, but not how they form from nothing. He designed a magnificent stage set for the perfect city, but forgot that cities are made of people, messy and unpredictable and gloriously human, who make choices based on more than just the curve of a street or the promise of an artificial lake in the desert. They need jobs in schools and grocery stores and reasons to stay when the dust storms blow. The dream was beautiful in its way. The advertisements were stunning and seductive. The vision was bold and ambitious and quintessentially American, believing that anything was possible if you planned well enough and sold hard enough. But the desert does not care about human dreams or human plans. It endures through geological time. It waits patiently. And eventually, slowly but inevitably, it reclaims what was always its own, one abandoned street at a time. Somewhere in the Mojave Desert, street signs still bear names like Imagination Drive and Visionary Boulevard. Nobody lives there. Nobody ever will. But those signs stand as monuments to what we once believed was possible, back when America felt young and anything seemed within reach. Did you know it? Comment down below. We will be reading